Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Conscious Grief Series 5. And today I am joined by Mónica Esgueva, who is a self-development teacher and a spiritual guide. So welcome, Mónica.
Thank you very much. So it's such a pleasure to be here with you.
And you also. And we're going to kind of dive into consciousness and spirituality and how, through pain and suffering, it can lead us into new awareness about who we are and where we're going and what our purpose is. And talking of purpose, I read on your website, you were an economist. You lived in London, where I am for a bit, and Paris. So how did you go from economist, finance, to becoming a spiritual guide? Perhaps you can talk us through that interesting journey first.
Well, in my case, it was not a crisis. I have seen that most people change their lives and their course of their lives and their purpose because of a crisis appears. In my case, I think it was just the natural course of things. And I went to India for 3 weeks. I was doing some research on Tibetans in exile and about their pledge in India, and at the feet in Dharamsala, at the feet of the Himalayas, where the Dalai Lama lives and many Tibetan lamas. And I ended up staying for 3 months. And what happened is I started learning with them. Learning about the mind, training my own mind, receiving teachings from the Dalai Lama. And I realized that I had to change my life. I have been thinking about that for a long time, but it was just the final push. I knew when I went back to Paris, where I was living, that I could not go on the same way. I really wanted to be of benefit to the world. And I thought I was not doing it. I had a good job. I have a good material life. I was married at that time. I married early, and we have everything that people aspire to, and I was not happy at all. I was not fulfilled. So I realized that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help others. I didn't know how to earn a life doing that, but I knew I could not go on the same way. So I made a pretty radical change. I left everything behind, literally. I divorced, I left my house, I left my plans, I left everything, my job, and I started from scratch. And the only thing I knew is I want to be of benefit. I didn't know how, though. So it was quite a bumpy road and quite an adventure.
Right. And yeah, a true leap of faith, as we say.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
how long ago was that, Mónica?
That was in 2006 when I first went to India, and then it happened is I started going for 10 years. I went 3 months every year to study with Tibetan lamas and receiving teachings from the Dalai Lama. And what I did is I took one step at a time. I started doing some training, mostly in the US, as a coach in NLP, hypnosis, and a number of things. And one thing led to another. It's like sometimes we think that to make such a big change, we need to have everything secured and clear and the whole path and the objectives and everything. And in my experience, it doesn't happen that way. I mean, I have been coaching people, transformation of people for the last 15 years or more. And my experience is that we are not allowed to see the whole path, because this is part of our learning here on Earth. We have to go one step at a time, and that's all you can see. And then once you take one step ahead, the next one becomes clear, and so on and so forth. So if we wait for everything to be clear and safe and have all the securities that we aspire to and get rid of uncertainty, well, then we'll never do anything in life.
Yeah, that's so true. And I just really acknowledge you and commend you for leaving, like you say, a very safe, very secure, financially abundant life and changing everything to be of service to the world, that you realized that you couldn't live on that superficial materialistic level anymore. And what an
It
adventure.
was a leap of faith, as you said. When I look at it now, it's like how I was like I don't understand it. I was really brave because I think it was hard. I mean, it was the 5 first years, and it was not. I was not able to sustain myself, and I had to simplify my life and renounce to a lot of things that we take for granted. But I have to say that I never regretted my decision, not one single time. And of course, you need to work on your faith and having faith in yourself when no one else have faith in you, and you have to work on perseverance because things don't show up immediately as we would like. It takes time. You have to sow before you can reap, and we are in a culture where we think that we want everything for yesterday, and it doesn't happen that way. So it takes a lot of perseverance, but it works out in the end if you keep the faith.
Yeah, I think it's such an important reminder. As you say, we're so obsessed with having everything immediately, and it's a good reminder that we just have to sow these things, we have to water them, we have to take our time, and eventually, we will reap the benefits. And I think that's the same in grief. A lot of the time we want it to be over because it feels so painful, and we don't know when it's going to end, and it's scary because it comes back in waves when we least expect it. And we were talking a little bit before this interview started about how sometimes through great pain, and I know that you said, your situation wasn't like that, but sometimes in great pain, we really sort of start seeking and thinking, what is life about? What am I doing here? Where do we go when we die? Asking these big questions that maybe we hadn't asked before. And perhaps that leads somebody down a spiritual path. And we do hear a lot the word spiritual, and it means different things to different people, but it would be interesting to hear your definition of what it means to be spiritual.
I think it's a very interesting question, a very pertinent one, because in what I have seen in most of the cases, in most cases, when people go through pain, grief, suffering, crisis, whether it is a divorce or it is they get fired from work, or they have a severe illness or an accident, or the children have a real big problem, all those things push you to the limit. And sometimes it's only when you hit rock bottom that you are willing to question your world. You are willing to question your paradigm. You are willing to question the way you are living. And it's only then that a door can open to something else. Because when everything is comfortable and everything agrees with you and your plans get accomplished, then why should you question yourself? Why should you question the way you are doing things? Everything is fine, right? So you only get to that point when things don't go your way. And it's only then for so many people that they can open a door towards something that is more profound, and that is spirituality. And as long as things go well for you, why should you question yourself? Why should you find new ways of doing things? Why should you just renounce to all the worldly pleasures?
Mm.
Even if you are not, because the thing is, most people are not satisfied with their lives. Because you cannot find the satisfaction in shallowness. You cannot find satisfaction in external things. But still, you can go on because, it's not, I mean, I don't like it. I'm distressed. I am dissatisfied. I am frustrated. But, it's fine. I can go on. So things continue to work the same way. You continue living like an automat, like a sleepwalker, without thinking about anything profoundly, because you feel safe enough in the known, And it's very difficult to just say, okay, out of my own willness, I want to make a change. So it's only when life pushes you to the limit that you are willing to open the door.
Mm.
And that's why we need crisis sometimes, or most of the times. We need suffering, no matter how uncomfortable and unpleasant that is, because it's the only way we humans will question ourselves and we take a different road. And for many people, that takes the road of going to a therapist. But for other people, it takes the road of, okay, maybe there are answers that are deeper that I have never explored. And this is the time. And sometimes deep sorrow can lead you to that. Why death exists? Why children die? Why do I have to go through this accident, or my company just went broke, or just went bust, or whatever, and I went broke, and I lost my wife, all those things that are really unpleasant. And then you question yourselves, maybe it's not why, but it's what for. What is the purpose of this? Maybe there is an opportunity here. Maybe this is not just the end of my world. Yes, maybe the end of your world up to that point, but maybe it's also the beginning of a different world. So, yeah, the short answer is yes, we do need crisis most of the times to be able to get into spirituality. Of course, this is not for everyone. So many people are born with that intuition, with that calling. But I would say 80% of the times people need a crisis.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. But how would you define spirituality or a spiritual person, for example?
I think spirituality is feeling the connection with something that is beyond your ego, beyond your mind, beyond your sensory world, that gives you peace, that gives you hope, that tells you that we are all intertwined, and somehow we're here on an adventure. We are here on a journey, and we are not our body, we are not our mind, we are not our possessions, we are not our achievements. We are, as Teilhard de Chardin used to say, a very well-known theological and a philosophical person, used to say, we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And this is a spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Um, I was thinking about people who might be completely new to this world. They might be in a lot of pain and suffering right now. And from your trainings, in India with the Tibetan monks, could you talk about the difference with pain and suffering, for example?
I think it's very relevant because we get very confused about that. Because we have a human body, we will always experience some sort of pain. Sooner or later, you hit yourself and it hurts, or you get sick in any way and it hurts. But it's not just our body. We also have a mind that suffers the pain. So, for example, you have a relationship, and the relationship that is important for you, whether it is a partner or a friendship or a family member, if that relationship, you break the relationship or the other person does, well, you do have the pain, and there's no way around it. The only way around it is not having any relationships with people, and that is impossible. Sometimes you have a cherished project or a dream and it doesn't come true. It hurts, and it's normal. It hurts. You cannot avoid that pain. So it's only when we want to avoid that pain that we suffer. So, for example, people try to avoid their pain by having an addiction to drugs or alcohol. It creates a lot of suffering. Sometimes something happens that is really, really tough. it happens once, and that time you feel the pain, and it's normal. It's just how it goes. But when you repeat that in your mind, is what creates the suffering. How many times we repeat something unpleasant in our minds, and it's like, okay, we are creating our own suffering. And I think it's also part of not understanding the principles of life here on earth. And one of the principles is that everything is impermanent. And then when we like something, we get attached to it. And it's like, please, I want this to stay the same way forever. And it's not going to happen. So at the moment that that changes, it creates a lot of suffering because we had a lot of attachment. We were grasping onto it. So we can avoid this suffering by all means, but it needs a lot of training in your mind and in your heart, but it's possible. And I think it's not just possible, but it's recommended, because otherwise you will be subject to a lot of suffering because of external situations. And what we are trying to work on is, okay, don't depend on external situations to go in one way or another. Don't depend on people for your own happiness and your own peace of mind. We have to work on ourselves so we can rely on ourselves as a source of peace, happiness, and joy, because all the external things are subject to change.
Yes, it's such an important reminder. And I remember being in a place in my life where I just wasn't sure what gave me joy anymore. And I think that life can become such a routine, and we're just, repeating the same things day in, day out. As we grow and change, what gives us joy also changes. And as we, grow older as well, and we lose our sense of kind of play, and we tend to work more rather than have fun, and it's really important for people to tap into the things that light them up. And I mean, one of the other parts of grief, which I was in for a long time, is numbness. And I really
Yes.
got stuck there. And that was also, partly why I wasn't sort of able to tap into joy. And so it's that part, it's that process of getting to know ourselves more.
Yes, and it's part of it is knowing ourselves and then going beyond what we thought it was possible. Because at that point, when we are in sorrow, or we are suffering inside, in psychological and emotional suffering, we think that there's no way out of it. And we don't understand that that is just an interpretation that we are making of life. And of course, we do have feelings, and we will always have, because this is part of the game of being on earth and having a body. We have feelings. But I think the important thing is not to get attached to those feelings, especially when those feelings are negative or low vibrational. Is learning to feel whatever we feel, and then let go of the feelings so we don't make it into long-standing emotions, because we do that through thinking. And it's like, okay, we get trapped into negative thinking, and then what we would do is, okay, we have really stable emotions that we think are part of ourselves. And we don't realize we are feeding those by thinking about it and getting trapped into them. And it doesn't have to be that way. It only depends on us. And of course, there are situations, life situations are more conducive to joy, and others that are more challenging. But it doesn't mean that we cannot go over the hurdles of life. Because if we take that as an opportunity to work on ourselves, then it makes sense. And this is what life is about. It's okay, we came here to go through tests, to go through obstacles, and be able to overcome them. And by doing that and working on ourselves, we become a better version of who we are. And we discover that we are just not this body, this ego, this mind. We are part of consciousness. And this part of consciousness has incarnated here to have this adventure, to go through the journey, to become more aware of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, we expand our consciousness and we expand the whole as well.
Yeah, I love everything you're sharing, because, this subject is also very close to my heart. And a lot of people don't have this framework, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that our soul, and this is a hard thing for people to, absorb, maybe at the very beginning of hearing it, but our our soul chooses the life that we're going to have, because our soul wants to evolve and grow, and that might be choosing some really tough situations with a lot of pain and grief, maybe because you're a very evolved soul potentially. And I think personally that when I understood this and belief system, really, if you like, that it made me become more empowered, about my life. Because I think before that, it was like, well, why me? Why are all these bad things happening to me? And actually, it made me feel like I must be a bad person because bad things happen to me. And the reframe of like thinking, okay, no, on some level, I chose this because I wanted to learn and I wanted to evolve. Like that is two completely different mindsets. One is like, I'm a victim of life. And the other one is like, I'm empowered in my
Right.
life. And it can be a hard thing, yeah, for people to get their heads around at first, but I think it's a really phenomenal concept.
Absolutely. I think when you have a materialistic point of view, a materialistic perspective, like it is taught in our society, it takes you to nihilism. So at that point, nothing makes sense. And everything is completely random. And whatever happens to us, we feel as victims of injustice. And nothing has a purpose. So it's a very sad way to live life. And as you said, you don't have any power because you are a victim of whatever happens to you. When you realize that even if we don't understand and we don't have all the pieces and we don't have all the information and knowledge to have the big picture of why we are going through this, doesn't mean that we didn't choose to be going through all this. This is part of the game on being on Earth. It's not remembering, because it's like life here is a test. If we knew the answers, then where is the merit? There's no learning. So we come here, we put ourselves through all these tests, and then it's okay, I will discover or rediscover all the answers through experience.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so empowering, as you were saying. This is of course, it's not always easy, but it was not meant to be. And that's the thing. It's like when you start understanding things with the framework of spirituality, then you know that little by little you will start collecting pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And you are not going to have the whole puzzle until you are enlightened. But you start having more pieces and things start making more sense. And you look backwards, or you look in hindsight, you look to your past and it's like, okay, at that time, what I went through didn't make sense, but now I understand. I had to go through that to be the person I have become now.
Mm-hmm.
And with a spiritual perspective, everything becomes easier and more meaningful. And then you understand that all the lessons, all the wisdom that you acquire, it will go with you. Because at the end of your life, if you have a materialistic point of view, you lose everything. everything that you hold dear will disappear. When you have a spiritual point of view, you know that the wisdom and the love that you gave, then that you will take with you, even if you don't take anything else. So it makes the whole journey here meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of the word that kept coming to me, like making meaning. We're making meaning. And as you said, when you first gave up your old life, you had no idea like how it was going to be from then, from that stage forward. But you made a big decision. As we said, you took a leap of faith. And for people who, I know it's a very different situation, but maybe for somebody who's experienced a very big loss right now and they just can't fathom like how life will ever be bearable again, it's like you just have to keep taking small steps forward. And eventually, at some stage, you will be able to look back with perspective and make meaning from it. And that is a hopeful perspective rather than I just can't continue here any longer.
Yes, and the thing, even when at the worst case scenario, when people commit suicide because they think they cannot cope with it anymore, we have to understand that only because your body doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't mean that your consciousness disappears and your state of consciousness goes on. So if you die in despair, you will be living on the other side. Your energy will continue feeling despair. So your challenges are not going to disappear. So if we have chosen them, even if the ego, of course, cannot understand why on earth did I choose all this, but your soul did. And it's very important that we find a way to make peace with it. Because if we don't, that despair, that disheartening feelings, that lack of hope will go on with you. And sometimes people get very, very angry with life and they get very bitter. And that gets into their skin, so to speak. So instead of just being a passing mood, it becomes part of your character. And then life becomes very, very difficult. And there's no way out unless you undo what you have done, which is letting that get into your skin. We have to do a lot of inner work at every single situation. Of course, it's easier when things go your way, but when things are difficult, it's a great opportunity to learn to live with it, to find peace with it, within, and to connect with something that is higher than yourself. Connected with a higher ground, whether it is through meditation, through prayer, through connection with others. That is very helpful, but we cannot stay wallowing our wounds, because then we are going to waste our precious time here on earth and this opportunity to grow and to evolve.
Thank you for making those suggestions for people about prayer, meditation. I think reaching out to others, reaching out to people who can teach you about spiritual practices, asking for help, that is actually a spiritual principle. And many of us find it extremely difficult to ask for help, especially, in our hyper sort of independent world. And we feel like we must be able to figure everything out ourselves. And like, why should I pay for this kind of thing? And it's like, but this is going to help you learn and grow by asking for help.
Yes, absolutely. And the same way, you have toothache or you have pain in your knee and you go to the doctor or to the dentist. It's exactly the same. We are not supposed to have all the answers. There are people that have specialized in something that has to do with your mind and has to do with the heart and has to do with the soul. So why should that be different? It's just something that, it's a mindset that we need to change. But I think it's very important to ask for help and to go to a professional that you trust, because of course, we can do everything on our own, but it will take such a long time and such an unnecessary pain that if someone has the answers or has some solutions or methods that you can apply, why ignore that?
Mm-hmm. And do you work with people on an individual level, or you mainly doing group work?
No, I do. I have worked for the last 15, 16 years with individuals, with dozens of them. And a lot of people come in because they were going through a crisis. They were going through pain. I mean, more than pain, suffering, as we were explaining the difference. And they didn't know how to get out of it. Sometimes they tried, sometimes they had looked for answers in the external things. They couldn't find answers, or changing jobs, things, every sort of issue. And we go through it, and it's like, for my role is mainly to help them understand that they can alleviate that suffering, and then if they want, they can continue their evolution, so they will find their own wings, not depending on anyone, not even me, but finding their own wings to fly, and getting rid of those burdens that make them drag their feet, and feeling that they're not good enough, or there's no hope for them. There's always hope. There's always a way out, but it's always through our own inner work. I'm sorry to repeat that a couple of times or 3 times, but I think it's very important, and I want to insist on that. There's no external solution for our inner problems. We cannot fill our vacuum with external things. Fulfillment can only come from within.
Yeah, thank you. And I always like the saying, we all have the answers inside of us, essentially. And but some other people like yourself, coaches, facilitators, therapists, can help us find those answers to the suffering.
Exactly. That's why meditation, for me, meditation is always something, is a must. Is not something that we could negotiate with. We should all meditate, because we cannot find the inner guidance. We cannot find the inner voice that will be guiding us if the only thing we have in our heads is chatter. If we have an endless chatter going on in our minds, an endless dialogue, then how can we get the knowledge, the information, the guidance that is within? We cannot listen to anything. There's too much noise inside of our heads. So meditation is what helps us calm down our feelings and our thoughts, and then we can do something with it. But as long as we are involved in that endless dialogue, there are many chances that we will get trapped there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Monica. I call this the Conscious Grief series, and I'd be interested to have your thoughts around what conscious grief is.
I think conscious grief is realizing that you have feelings and you have emotions, and that feelings are ephemeral. They are just temporary. It's only up to ourselves, from that awareness of those feelings, that we can let them go. There's no need to grasp them, to think that this is who I am. I am going through this right now, but it's not who I am. And this has not the power to dictate my life at all. This is something that is just passing through me. I'm listening, I'm feeling them, and then I let it go. This is doing it from a conscious awareness. And when you do that, life becomes much lighter instead of being a heavy burden. It becomes full of possibilities. Because I'm feeling this now, but if I'm just open to whatever I will feel tomorrow. And it will change. We never feel the same. But if we get stuck on those thoughts that are so negatives, that are so full of hatred or anger or revenge or greed, or most of the times the sorrow is also very linked to anger. We get very angry with life. Why do I get this? I don't deserve this. And that anger becomes entrenched in our cells. And if we get there and we don't let it go, it's very, very difficult to make something positive out of something that is so negative. So another thing that I will advise people to do is work on your gratitude. Just focus on all the things that are a blessing to you. And there are always things that we should be grateful for. We take so many things for granted. And when we are suffering, we used to do that. We have like a filter that is very biased, is very negative, is very gray, sometimes very dark. And we let out so many things that are really going well in our lives. And we can only see that if we change the filter through gratitude. So I think gratitude is such a powerful tool for everyone.
Yes, certainly is. Thank you so much for reminding us about that. I often say gratitude is the antidote to grief.
Right.
Yeah. And it can feel, when we're in the heavy feelings, and it can feel so impossible that they're going to change, but they will, because as you say, the only thing we know is everything is impermanent. So the feelings will change. Yeah. And do you have a gift for the listeners today? So do you want to share that?
Sure. I'm very happy to share an ebook that I have written about how to raise the level of your consciousness. And I think at this point, we all need that. And it's a very practical, very simple way to look at a number of things and put that into practice very quickly. And I know that a lot of people don't like to go into long books, and they want something quick. So I think it's a good beginning. I will not stay only there. I think we have to get deeper, but I think it's a good way to start the path, or to also to accelerate our path towards a higher level of consciousness, of wisdom, of fulfillment, and inner peace. That's exactly what we are all looking for, really.
It really is. So that's an amazing gift to everybody. Thank you very much for that, Monica. And Monica has written 9 books, and you speak how many different languages?
4.
Wow.
Only 4.
Wow. I think that's incredible. So yeah, it's just been really wonderful to meet you, Monica. And thank you for helping to raise the consciousness of the planet and all of the work that you do.
Thank you, Tara. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you.
And thank you to everybody who's been listening. Bye.